Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the WellMed Charitable Foundation Caregiver Teleconnection. Our session today is Are You a Control Freak Caregiver? And for this wonderful presentation, we have Dr. Barry Jacobs, who has much experience in this field, who writes books,
I
who
thought you were going to say I had much experience being a control freak, and maybe I do. Go ahead.
I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell folks about yourself, Dr. Jacobs.
All right. Thank you, Evelyn, and thank you all for being here. And hopefully, the first thing you learn about me is I hopefully have a good sense of humor, but we'll see. Um, as you may have heard, as Evelyn and I were talking before, I live in the Philadelphia area, so probably pretty far from most of you, and it's a beautiful spring day here. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been a clinical psychologist for 30 plus years, specializing in working with caregivers. And I do a lot of writing. I've written two books on family caregiving, one called The Emotional Survival Guide for Caregivers, looking after your parents, and the second one called Meditations for Caregivers. And I do a lot of writing on the AARP website. You ever go to the AARP website and just put my name in, you'll see dozens of articles I've written over the last 10 years on caregiving. And I've also had the opportunity to do a lot of presentations for Caregiver Teleconnections, which has been a real honor for me.
And us.
Well, thank you. So the last thing I'll say about myself is, and maybe most importantly, is I'm a former caregiver. And that is, I grew up in a family where my dad had brain cancer while I was a teenager. And that really, taught me firsthand, very at an early age, just how devastating this could be for families when a family, a loved one is in the case of my dad, slowly dying of cancer. And then as an adult, I took care of both my mother and stepfather with dementia. So I've had a lot of professional experience, but I always say it's really the personal experience that informs what I do every day and gives me a sense of purpose about helping caregivers. So I appreciate you all being here. If you've seen me present before, then I like to make this a conversation. I don't like to just kind of lecture. It's not fun for me, and it's probably not as much fun for you. So all along throughout this presentation, I'm going to ask you questions, and you can answer by unmuting yourself, hopefully with Evelyn's help, or you can put answers, your thoughts into the chat box, and I'll read them. The conversation today is about control. Being, control freak is a very is a negative name that you call somebody. It's not nice to be called a control freak. But I think really the truth is that all caregivers need to exercise a certain amount of control over what they're doing in order to make sure that they're taking good care of the person that they're caring for, and being able to care for them as efficiently as possible. And there are pros and cons that come along with that we'll talk about in just a moment. So here's the agenda for today. What is a control freak? What is the right amount of caregiver control? And then some ideas for maybe modifying how much control you exert if you think that perhaps you exert too much. And then, as with all the presentations that I do for Caregiver Teleconnection, this presentation is based on an article that I wrote recently for the AARP website. I always include the links to those articles. So when you get this PowerPoint later, if you want to go to the article and read more, you just click on this link and it'll take you there. So I hope this is what you have in mind for today. And let's start off with the first set of questions. So first question, and this is for you. Why is it important for caregivers to take control? What's good about control? Why should caregivers do this? So you can, as I said, you can put an answer in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and just talk. We're a small enough group today. So I see one answer, and Colleen Brewer says safety. And I think that's a really good answer, Colleen. And I'd love to hear more. And Michelle says safety. So Colleen or Michelle or both, if you would unmute and talk a little bit more about what you mean by safety and why control is important for safety. I could guess, but what you mean, but it'd be good to hear more from you. So why is control important for safety?
Can unmute yourself or just put more into the chat box if you're more comfortable with that.
Yeah,
There we
med
go.
management, physical safety, nutrition. Good answers, because medications are obviously managing medications well, and taking a firm hand to them, being controlling about them is essential for keeping the people we're caring for well. We don't want them to take too many medicines, too few medicines. We don't want them to have what's called an adverse drug reaction, which unfortunately every year lands a lot of people in the hospital. We want to make sure that they're physically safe, that they're not walking around the room when they should be using a walker, that they're not doing things that would put them at risk. And interesting, this last one, I have strong feelings about nutrition. I believe nutrition is extremely important for physical and emotional well-being. But I'd love to hear more, Colleen, what you think about how controlling what people eat is important for their safety.
Michelle has opened up her line. Michelle?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to mention first, just kind of explain safety from my perspective. In addition to what you've said, it seems that as time progresses, your person's ability to recognize when something isn't safe isn't the same. So the logic that we have to say, okay, if I do this, then this happens. That's not there as time progresses. So you have to be there for them to help them make decisions. And then I think you were talking about food then too. I mean, my dad is, he's my stepdad and he's 90. And at this point, the doctors are saying, well, whatever he wants to eat is fine. Well, to some extent, yes. I mean, because it can cause, like if I just let him eat chocolate, not very nutritious. We want him to feel happy and not have bursts of blood sugar up and down. And in addition, I mean, if he's not getting the right amount of fruits and vegetables, that could change his ability to even go to the bathroom. So yeah, maybe I'm a little bit of a control freak where I want to make sure he gets what he needs, not just what he likes, to keep him healthy.
Michelle, we're all a little bit of a control freak. I think that comes with being a responsible person. And I appreciate your thoughts. So I want to. There's a lot of comments in the chat box I want to read, and then I'm going to play devil's advocate here, which I like to do. B. Flores writes, "Do not trust that anyone has your loved one's best interest." In other words, they may not really care enough to do it right. They may not be as careful with your loved one as you're going to be. And so you have their best interest at heart and they don't necessarily. Minerva says to be able to ensure that your loved one is living a healthy life. And Minerva, what you just said sounds very much along the lines of what Michelle said. Though, I'm a bit of a chocoholic. I do take some exception to picking on chocolate, but we'll leave that for another day. Carol says, because, whoops, I just missed what Carol said. 1 second. Carol said, because if you want something done right, do it yourself. And that, Carol, that's an old saying that has stuck around as long as it has, because I think a lot of people believe it. And I think it's probably true to a large degree. B. Flores says the well-being of your loved one is in your hands and you are the responsible party for them. And I think especially for someone with dementia who may not be able to act responsibly or make decisions responsibly for themselves, then in order to really be the good family member you are, whether you're a spouse or you're an adult child, it really is important that you control some of the things that they do. Tina says, still being person-centered, provides supported decision-making. All right, Tina, I know what supported decision-making is, but it's something very specific. And if you wanted if you would like to unmute and talk about it, that would be great. Because along the lines of what you said, Tina, when my mother was in mostly the early stages of dementia, she had vascular dementia, and I would say to her, "Mom, you can't walk around your apartment without your walker," and she would say, "I don't like my walker," and I would say, if you walk around without your walker, you increase the chances of falling and getting hurt. And she fell and got hurt many times. And she would say to me, "You're not my boss." And it's true. I was not her boss. And she really took great offense at my trying to control her decisions. But it did get to this point where I thought her decisions were not good decisions. Not good for her and not good for me, because I also, when she would fall, we would wind up in the emergency room and I'd sit there with her for 4 hours at a time. It wasn't much fun either.
Yeah. And
But
Tina wants to talk to you.
I would love to hear your thoughts, Tina. And I know Tina from social media, so good to hear you in person.
Yes, and you did a session for New Hampshire too. You did a for the family caregiver program. So yeah, I think providing some input to our loved ones to when they can provide some support in helping them to make decisions and helping them if they can understand the outcomes. My background is in adult protection and now in caregiver support. So I'm not trying to dictate to them, because even though they may have some impairments, they're not children. They're not, and I think to be able to appreciate that and just trying to help them to make decisions, to help them understand some of the consequences to the best of their ability as much as they can, and bringing it down. Even though they may have some impairments, we can help them to understand to some degree, and help them. I know supported decision making has been popular with the DD population,
And
and they've been,
DD meaning
oh,
developmental disabled.
sorry, yes, I'm sorry, yes.
That's right.
And I think that it's something that can be really successful when done appropriately.
I think this is a great idea, and it's actually very apropos of this conversation. And I should have thought of adding this to this deck into my article originally, because I'm very familiar with supported decision making. So essentially, what Tina is saying is, we don't, my mother didn't like me being her quote unquote boss. She, I was her son. I was not her dictator. I didn't want to feel like a dictator with my mother, even though I didn't like the decisions she was making for herself. So what Tina's saying is supported decision making is, rather than tell a person, you're going to eat, if you want to eat chocolate, but you're not going to get any chocolate today. Instead, you're going to eat a nice salad, right? Instead of doing that to them, we would say instead, if you eat chocolate, it's what's going to happen to you? Well, your blood sugars are going to go up, and then they're going to crash, and you're going to feel lousy. And if you eat a salad, it's going to mean that your blood sugars are better and you're going to be healthier. What do you think would be best for you? We would be handing the decision back to them. And our hope is that rather than telling them what to do, that the person would then make a decision which is healthier for them. The problem is, there are a lot of people who may not be able to make a sound decision because they lack the capacity to do that because of dementia, or they love chocolate so much they're going to choose chocolate every time anyway. But I think your point, Tina, is we really don't want to take over other people's lives. We want to really give them every opportunity to maintain decision-making powers over their own life. And that I agree with you, but it's hard, right? Especially hard in the case of dementia. So I thank you for your thoughts. I want to just read some other comments, and then we're right at the beginning here. We're already getting into some really rich conversation. And I appreciate all these comments. B says, offering the stability and routines that your loved one needs. And I think that makes a lot of sense, B, again, especially for someone with dementia, because we know people with dementia need the predictability and the structure in order to do as well as they can. But what is that last word that would maybe stick in the craw of some people, would have stuck in the craw of my mother, that this idea that you who decides what somebody needs. And my mother would say, that she gets to decide what she needs. I don't get to decide what she needs. And that's really the rub here. That's what we're talking about. So Colleen says, and this is getting back to my question to her earlier, and I appreciate your additional thoughts, Colleen. Safety with nutrition for me means managing a dysphagia diet. Okay, dysphagia diet is a diet for when someone has swallowing difficulties that is specifically prescribed. Following the diets prescribed by our speech pathologist, monitoring water intake, sugar monitoring for diabetes, etc. And so, Colleen, these are great ideas, because when someone is having swallowing issues, then what may happen is the food may go down, down the wrong tube, as they say, and into their lungs, and then they will get a really bad pneumonia called an aspiration pneumonia, with running a high fever, and will wind up in the hospital. And they don't want that, and you don't want that. So helping someone who's having swallowing difficulties eat a prescribed diet, which may mean not solid foods, but may mean soft foods, which are sometimes called mechanical softs, which is a terrible term. Could you imagine a worse appetizing name than mechanical softs? But drinking or having thickened liquids in order to manage what they eat and drink, so that they're less likely to get pneumonia. That's very important. So yes, Colleen, safety, you made me understand now what you mean by safety with nutrition. I think you're exactly right. Kim says, safety with nutrition for me is making sure that your loved one has healthy meals, because sometimes they forget that they have had a meal. That's true. And sometimes being a control freak can cause you not to receive help that is available to you, because you think that you can handle it all by yourself. Aha. Okay. So what you just introduced is the other side of this, right? So we take a lot of responsibility for the care receiver that we feel we have to protect. And it's really our duty to make sure that they don't run risks that they don't have to run. But but Kim is now bringing up a different kind of control, and that is when we begin to try to control how other people help the care receiver. That's often where conflict comes in. And I agree with you, Kimberly. We're going to talk more about that in just a second. Great, you guys. This is a terrific conversation that you've helped us get off on here. Okay, so let's move forward here. All right, and one other real quick question. We'll do this really fast. And how would you define control freak? I'll define control freak. A control freak is somebody who, if they aren't in control of everything that's going on, is very uncomfortable and maybe very anxious. And so when they control things, like, you can imagine somebody who is a parent of young kids. And what do young kids do? Well, young kids play, and they get unruly, and they fight and get dirty. And if you're a parent that doesn't like that, you want your kids to be neat and clean and well behaved every single moment, then you are on them, right? You are making sure that they are doing exactly what you want them to say all the time, what you want them to do all the time. But you also have this. It's sort of like you're running the risk of struggling with them. So that's one example. Or a control freak boss might be somebody who wants their employees to fill out every report exactly the same way, using the exact same language, and that doesn't give the employees any opportunity to maybe express their ideas or do things in their own style. So control freaks exist in the world. And so my question is, on a 1 to 10 basis, in which 0 means that doesn't apply to me at all, and 10 means fits me exactly, what number would you give yourself? And I'll say, I'm probably a 6. I'm kind of in the middle somewhere. But what, you put in the chat box, what number would apply to you? Okay, so B says 9.5. Okay, B. Working on allowing others to help. Not everything has to be perfect. Agreed. That's a good thing. Kim says 5. Anna says 10. Okay, so is someone going to say 11 or 12? We have very people who really are putting a lot of effort into controlling. Carol says 9. Okay. We have a very responsible group here today. Colleen says 8. No one can do it like I can. Colleen, I am sure you're correct. I'm sure you're correct. Though I tell you what, Anna says she's a 10. That's a little higher than 8. Maybe she would do it better than you. I'm just joking now. So, all right. Any other ratings? All right, Anna, thank you. LOL. Any other thoughts? Colleen, thank you. Tina's a 5. Good, Tina. Anyone below a 5? Probably not. Thomas is 7. That's pretty good, Thomas. Appreciate it. Okay, I see we're mostly in the upper range, and some people in the top of the upper range. Okay, all right. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I mean, control is not good or bad. I mean, or let me say it's good and bad, right? There are things about controlling something that really has a lot of benefits, and sometimes there may be some downsides. And we're, like anything else in life, we're weighing the pros.
Minerva, do we have a problem?
I don't hear Barry anymore.
He's seized up too. Darn, I wanted to hear the rest of this.
Oh my God, this was so interesting.
I know. He's going to come. He just checked out, so he's going to re-enter, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Hang tight, folks. And thank you for all your input. It's been fabulous. It's such a tough line to be in control enough and not too much, especially if you can't let people help, because caregivers need help. You need to be able to ask for help, especially with dementia. Okay. And now he's going to come back. Gosh, I wonder if he lost power or something.
I think he jinxed himself when he said he had good weather.
That's right. Beautiful weather, spring weather. Should we call him, Minerva?
Text him if you have his number. I don't have it.
No, I only have his email. But I can email him. Email issue. Well, I've never had this happen before. Would people like to talk about what they feel the pros and cons are for them in being a control freak caregiver?
I, I think one of the cons of being a caregiver and being a control freak is it can take away from your loved one's dignity because you want to make sure that they still have their dignity. Um, with my father, I had to realize that he was still a man when he had dementia, especially when it came to taking things away like his car keys. You know, it it was it was very hard. And so the process of of always reminding that he was still my dad. I wanted him to continue to have his dignity, even though the decisions I was making were so hard. So a lot of things I would go to him instead of saying, we need to do this, I would make it together. Even when sometimes he would get mad, I would turn around and I had to remember he's still my dad. I want him to keep his dignity as long as he can. And so that caused me to stop being a control freak when it came to caring for my dad. And I lost at the beginning, I was, because I felt like I was the only one that could I was the only one that could care for him. I was the only one that could make the decisions. And I lost a lot of help that I could have gotten. So that changed me in my process.
Such an excellent point. I think so much of the time, even if we don't say it out loud, we give off the tone that, well, yeah, but I do that. That's my job. I take care of that. And what you're actually saying is, I don't think you do it as well as, or they might hear that as the message. I don't think you would do it as well as I do. But you cannot keep going forever and ever taking care of someone 24/7 or feeling responsible for them 24/7. And that's kind of the trade-off between how much control is good and how much control do you have to, feel like you take. It's a tough decision sometimes, especially in your case when you talk about, your feelings. Okay, let's see what we got here. B says delegate tasks and trust others to handle things. That's a good one. The other thing that a lot of caregivers have said on these calls is to always make a list of the kinds of things that you would be comfortable with people helping with. And it starts very simply, like maybe doing grocery shopping or picking up pharmacy items or taking them on the trip to the doctor for you. Things that are fairly simple that don't require huge amounts of time. And it goes all the way down to how about a day of respite a week? That would really help, so I can get out and see my friends and be social, and do things that keep me healthy. And that's the whole point. That's the cutting point for being a control freak is you have to be healthy too. If all you do is try to control things all the time, you're not taking care of you, and you got to take care of you. So I think, it's tough decision making. It's that fine line. It's that edge of the razor. You're on one side or the other. Who else? Let me hear from other people. Pros and cons. Oh, B says things that I'm working on. Wow. Delegate tasks and trust others to handle them competently, accept that not everything will go according to plan, and that's okay. This is great. Focus on what you can control and let go of what you can't. That's a really good one. Practice mindfulness and learn to be present in the moment and not worry about things to come or things that have passed. Communicate openly, listen to others' perspectives without feeling the need to dominate the conversation. That's a tough one. Recognize when your desire for control is causing stress of tension and let it go. Okay.
I think the pro of being someone who's might be control freak is that you're really well organized and things are that you probably have a really good set schedule so that if something were to happen, that things are kind of are pretty well laid out and the person you're caring for has a nice schedule and they're doing well and things are well documented. The con to that is that you may have a hard time adapting if things change. Sometimes that might be difficult to do. I think change is hard for most people, but that might just be an additional.
Well, and change is always going to happen, with the kinds of things that you providing care for, whether it's Parkinson's or dementia or, any of the different things where you become a caregiver, cancer. It makes it tough because it's changing every day. They either get worse or, their mind gets worse. So it's a tough one. Yeah, good point. Who else? Pros and cons. Darcy, you're making me hungry. Anybody, come on. Thomas, are you the one who had? Oh, go ahead.
Pro for me would, like she was saying, I'm a caregiver, not physical caregiving, but I manage everything to pick up medication, schedule appointments. If somebody has a question at the doctor, they call me, oh, they said they don't have insurance. Here it is. He should have it, but here it is, or they should have it. So the pro would be everybody knows who to contact me, and they're all family members. And they know that I know what's going on with them, even if I'm not doing the actual physical care, they know that I know their insurance, deductibles, co-pays, what's going on, what did this doctor say, what's their prescription, pick up their medication, are we late, are we not, that kind of stuff. The con would be that I have no break because managing a lot of time, a lot of appointments, a lot of things for 4 people, plus myself, plus my husband, plus my stepdaughter. So it's a lot of time consuming. I don't have a break.
Barry, you missed some really good stuff here.
It sounds like it, Anna. Really appreciated what you were saying, and I want to apologize. They're doing some tree work here, and they must have hit a power line because my electricity just went out for a while.
Oh,
And
no.
I lost my internet with it. But fill me in, Evelyn, on what I missed.
We just talked about the pros and cons with people offering stuff, and there was this wonderful list. I'm forgetting.
Sure, it's better than my list here.
No, just the kinds of things, even including mindfulness and being okay with change, being okay with people not doing as good a job as you might do, if you're a control freak. I mean, just really wonderful, interesting things. So,
yeah. I thank you for picking this up, Evelyn. I thank everybody for pitching in and making the most of this situation. Let me go on because I'm going to introduce something that I think Kimberly brought up a little earlier, is with a case, and that is, let's imagine this woman Sally, imaginary person. This is just a nice photograph I found on the internet, not anybody real. But let's say she cares for her mother with moderate dementia in her home. And she's developed a strict routine for her. And we heard earlier that strict routines for people with dementia are a good thing. It helps, that predictability helps them function better. However, and you can read this in the article in AARP that I wrote, she's going to get some respite because her little brother Ned, is going to take mom for a week. And then she tries to tell Ned about the routine that he should follow with mom. And he gets angry at her. And he gets angry at her because she's the big sister, and throughout his life has been telling him what to do. And he didn't like it when he was a little kid, and he certainly is not going to put up with it now that he's an adult. And here his big sister is trying to tell him what to do again. And so he turns around and he calls her a control freak. And she feels hurt because she's trying to do the right thing by mom, and she can't understand why Ned won't do the right thing. And so why did this happen? Well, because when we control other people, we control anybody, whether I was, trying to control my mom and she was calling me her boss, or we're trying to control other people that may also pitch in with the caregiving. When we try to control them, most people don't like to be controlled. So my question for you, we'll skip the first question and go to the second. What advice would you give Sally? Ned doesn't want to do what he thinks is the right thing to do. Ned has called her name. She's pissed and she's hurt. What advice would you give Sally? And this is probably something if you want to unmute yourself for, that would be great.
Yeah. B has a chat.
Okay. Let's see what B wrote. Do not take it personal. Well, easy for you to say, B. You didn't grow up with Sally. Sally was the most controlling, bossy, big sister that you've ever met. It was like Lucy from Charlie Brown. She was unbearable. Why shouldn't I take it personally? If I'm Ned, she's made my life miserable most of my life. So why shouldn't I take it personal?
B also said, offer the routine and directions and let it go into his hands. Let it go. And Ned will learn or improve on routines.
Really great answer, B. That's the kind of flexibility that I think is respectful of Ned. Whereas if you try to tell Ned exactly the way it should be done, and if he deviates from that at all, then he's putting mom in terrible jeopardy. That's most of the time an exaggeration, and makes Ned feel like he's not being treated as a fellow caregiver. He's being treated like Sally's junior assistant, which is not what Ned is going to put up with.
And she's not going to get any help.
And she won't get, Ned won't want to do this again. Exactly. Because if his sister has given him grief this time, why would he want to take mom again, next year or next month to give her some respite? He won't, unless it's not going to do their relationship any good either. They're butting heads like this.
Kimberly?
Go ahead.
I would recommend that the way that Sally tells Ned, instead of telling Ned, if she would convey her mother's routine as a teamwork, instead of saying, this is what you need to do. It's the way sometimes you talk to people, the tone. And if you're making people feel like you're included in the care of your mother and you're going to work as a team, he would have taken it not as controlling. So sometimes it's the way that you talk to people and the tone, instead of trying to be, you make people feel like they're involved in the whole plan.
Kimberly, that's great. And by the way, is Kim or Kimberly, what do you prefer?
It doesn't matter.
All right. Well, I think what you said was great. I'll just add one other thing, and that is when people feel that they're being, ordered to do something, they feel disrespected and they're not going to be so cooperative. But if you include them, you're empowering them, you're giving them some skills, you're teaching them some things that seem to work, then that might help Ned feel better. Then he feels like his big sister isn't talking down to him, but his big sister is giving her the benefit of her experience. So I think that's right. Any other thoughts about this before? And I see something in the chat. And Carol says something I've been asking myself a lot since I started accepting help. Well, did anybody die? No, and it's all good. Yes, Carol, I think that's right. So can anybody else do as good a job as you do, Carol? I'm going to bet my salary that the answer is no, that no one is going to do exactly the high quality job that you do. However, I don't think care receivers need perfection. They need good enough. And other people maybe other relatives or people that you hire. Maybe they're what they do is good enough, and no one got hurt and nobody died. So
And they need to take care of themselves.
correct. So Sally needs that week of respite, but it's very hard for her to let go during that week. So let me go forward here. So there are three things and I see one of the chat comment in the chat. Let me get to it. You know, and it's Thomas or Tom. We have printed out a schedule that my mother uses to follow, and it's used when someone comes to help, and it makes it easier. And that, you know, that's good. I mean, that's great, especially if you have new people coming into the house all the time. You know, one of the things with my mom, we would get personal care aides. We would hire personal care aides, and sometimes we had the same aide. I had one aide that was great for about a year, and she really got to know my mom, and she got to develop her own routines with my mom. But a lot of times the personal aides who would come, they didn't know my mom, and they, you know, whatever instruction I gave them was very helpful for them. So, you know, giving those instructions to people is great. After a while, though, if they get to know your mother, I would imagine they'll develop their own ways of relating with your mother, and maybe not follow that schedule strictly. Maybe they'll do it a little bit different if they find that doing it a little different works for them. But I think giving people that information in a respectful way is important. So first idea I have here, and we already just talked about it, and a number of you said it, that there's not one right, you know, there's not one right way all the time. There are right ways of administering medicine. So this is an exact quote from the article. Caregiving is not an exact science, except for administering medications and other medical tasks. Most of what caregivers do doesn't demand rigidly hewing to one right way. There's usually a range of potential solutions that are right. And do you believe that? I mean, so I hear a number of you do. Are there folks that don't believe that feel like, why wouldn't you do it the best way? Why is mediocre good enough when you could do it better if you just do it this way? Any thoughts?
If you happen to be on the phone, I can also see if you press *6, you can unmute yourself, and I can call upon you. You can talk to us. Love to hear from any of you.
Okay, well, they've been great. I can't complain. If they're going to get quiet on me now, that's fine, right?
Okay, I don't want to be the talker.
Go right ahead.
But isn't being perfect all the time stressful?
I think it is, truthfully, but I will also say to you, for folks that are fearful that things are going to go wrong, then if they stick to the way they know it's going to go right, or they feel confident it's going to go right, then it's less stressful to do that than to do something else. So the people who are very controlling, are usually people who are anxious that things are going to go awry. And so they want to be controlling to decrease, to make sure that safety is ensured, but also to maintain, to really manage their anxiety. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right,
yes.
good. All right.
And
So
we had a chat, which is interesting. Toileting issues must be done right. You know, we've had several conversations on the teleconnection lately about toileting and about bathing. And because oftentimes people with dementia, particularly, have a difficult time. They don't want to take their clothes off. They don't know when they have to go to the bathroom. I mean, and how you deal with those things can be difficult and pretty technical. On the other hand, to try to make somebody take a shower every day when they don't want to bathe, maybe there is a different way to get them clean. So what do you think, Barry?
I think, well, so to get to Carol's point here, yes, toileting issues should be done right, but what is right? Right is not necessarily, it has to be done exactly this way. That maybe there is some flexibility in what right toileting issues are, what right toileting is. So, my stepfather was markedly demented before he went into a nursing home, and he had lots of toileting issues. And we tried lots of different things, and some worked well one day and then didn't work well the next day. And so it was a lot of improvisation to try to get a routine going. But there was, because of the nature of his disease, he varied, and therefore what was right varied. But also, when he was doing well, then it may not just be one way of doing it. So a lot of this, unfortunately, is relative. Yes, I like your comment that you added.
Yeah, right.
Maybe a better way to put that: the end result must be right. The end result is you want to minimize accidents for your sake and for the sake of the care receiver. And I agree with you. Okay, we got broad and what's right. Let's look at the next idea. And we've already said this. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this. And that is, we don't want Sally to dictate to Ned what he does. And if he perceives what she's saying or how she's saying it is that my big sister is dictating to me again, then he's going to react negatively. But we want to do what Kim said and what other people have said. We wanted to explain, give the information, and then let them decide what they want to do with the information. So we want to provide guidance if they are open to guidance. Ned might want to say, I don't care about the routine that goes on in Sally's house. Mom and I will figure out our own routine, which I don't think would be the smartest thing for Ned to do, but he might do that. Or Ned may take some of what Sally says, and if Sally's able to provide some context and some rationale, why does Sally think Mom reacts better to this approach versus that approach? What has Sally found? What her experience has been, to give Ned some evidence that one approach might in fact be better than a different approach. That would be helpful for him, rather than just saying to him, do this. And then when you're trying to give people guidance, you have to know your audience. Some people want strict guidance. If I'm going to take Mom for a week, I want to know, give me the instruction manual. And I hope that instruction manual's got 300 pages, because I want to know exactly what to do, right? Because otherwise I'm going to get really nervous. But if for other people, if you try to give them a 2-page pamphlet with instructions, they're going to bristle. They're going to react negatively. It all depends on how oppositional they are. So you have to figure out what your approach is and to gauge your tone with the person you're speaking with, so that what we don't want is for Sally to alienate Ned. And we don't want you to miss out on help you may get, because people feel like you're telling them what to do in a way that they can't tolerate, and so they're going to back off. And then you miss out on the opportunity of getting some respite that really may be helpful to you, and it may help you be a better caregiver in the long run. So we want to include people, as Kim said. We want to empower them. We don't want to belittle them by giving overly strict directions to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm doing a lot of talking now, unfortunately, because I'm anxious after having missed so much time. The last thing I'm going to go through, and then we'll just open it up for your thoughts. And I heard this also came up in the chat, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. And as a matter of fact, perfection most of the time is not possible. So as I said with my stepfather, and one of the things that we say about dementia in general is that dementia waxes and wanes. Usually, generally speaking, people with dementia will do best in the morning when they are probably best rested. And as the day wears on, particularly, 4 o'clock on, they start to sundown, perhaps, they do worse, and they'll need more help at that point. But there were some days that my stepfather was better than others. There were some hours he was better than others. There were some moments he was better than others. And so my stepfather's conditions changed. His needs would change with those conditions. And so no matter, all the best laid plans, as they say, couldn't always account for what he needed at any given time. So we had to always have ideas about what we would do next, contingency plans, and that whatever plans we had just got overturned and needed to be revised. So our control in those situations are imperfect, and that includes whether others help us and how they help us. And in general, I mean, as hard as we may want to as much as we may want, that caregiving can be boiled down to a set of instructions that we follow and everyone follows and everything goes great. In my experience, and this depends on the disease, again, if we're talking about dementia, that we need to really lower our expectations for how well we can keep things on track, and that the best caregivers, in my experience, having worked with caregivers for 30 plus years, are the ones who are the most flexible, the most creative, the most able to adapt on the fly as conditions change, rather than try to keep things one way, because like, you know, it doesn't work. I mean, too much changes. So that's my little spiel for today. And as I mentioned, you could read more about this in the article that I wrote. What thoughts do people have? You know, did I tell you things you already know? I think I did, but I do that all the time, right? So what do you think? I mean, what do you think about this idea of being flexible, creative, and nimble, as opposed to trying to control things as much as possible?
If you're on the phone, you can press *6. You know, if you're on Zoom, you can chat, you can unmute yourself, put your hand up. We'd love to hear from you.
I think I've left them cold here, or I think I don't
No, they were very excited when you didn't come back on for a little bit. People were going like, "Oh, that was so good."
Well, now, you know, but then they decided that they were better off without me because they were having such a good time without me, and that's just the way it goes. So I do see a comment here. B. Flora says, "Love it. Perfectly imperfect. Must be flexible, creative, and adaptable." Good. I like that. I like that you like that. Carol says, suggestions about learning to ask for help. And Thomas says, you have to be flexible with the disease as it constantly progressing, sometimes slowly and sometimes quickly. Flexibility is a must, or you will learn the hard way. And that's for sure, because it particularly with dementia, it waxes and wanes. Anybody have any thoughts about maybe, particularly when they try to recruit other people to help with the caregiving, how they may approach them differently in the future? How they might figure out who needs a lot of instructions and who doesn't need a lot of instructions, or is not going to react well to a lot of instructions. Any thoughts about that? I see. Yes, B. The link to the article is in the deck, so I'll show you in just a second. We'll go back up here, and there's the link, and I'll actually put this into the chat. Whoops, I thought I could. Maybe I can't.
You'll get that when we send out the post-session. No, I shouldn't say that. You're not going to get a post-session survey on your email. We have a session survey right now. It's a poll. Is everybody seeing that, Minerva, or just me?
I saw it.
Everyone should be able to see it.
Okay. Yeah. So what we would ask you to do is to fill this out now, because we want to give, immediate feedback to our speakers, our presenters who try so hard to make this excellent for you. But also you will get the resources and the PDF from Dr. Barry via email. So go ahead and look at this session survey here and give us your comments.
Yeah, thank you very much for your patience today. I mean, I think I must have been gone for 10 minutes, and
you were great, Dr. Jacobs. You was great.
Well, you're being very nice to me. I'm going to.
Things happen. Come on, you know what they say.
Well, so I
Stuff
tried to
happens.
control things. I tried to take into account everything, and I forgot about power outage. So I'm now kicking myself because I couldn't control that.
Oh, terrible. I want to thank you so much. I want to thank the caregivers so much for being here, for being so participative. I mean, it was fabulous to have all of that input, different ideas, different opinions, and for people to admit they're a 10 or a 9.5. So you notice I didn't put one in. So thank you so much, folks. I'd also like to thank the WellMed Charitable Foundation. They try so hard to get these fabulous presenters who are so good at, very specialized topics, and then to include your information, your comments, your knowledge, your experience on the podcast so that other caregivers can share, what you have learned. So I want to thank you all for your participation. I want to tell you that we have 2 upcoming sessions. We have one on Wednesday, that's tomorrow, Empowering Care Partners, Tips, Tools, and Takeaways Supporting Those Caring for Someone Living with Parkinson's Disease. We haven't had that for a while. So that would be good. And then next Tuesday, Unique Tips for Family Caregivers that will amaze you. So I love that title. It will amaze you. So please keep joining us on these calls. And thank you again so much for what you do. And Minerva, how will I know when people are done with the survey?
When I start seeing no one's answering, I'll stop it.
Oh, so you'll stop the recording?
Yeah.
You can
Please
stop
answer
the
me.
recording now.
Oh, okay. I'm going to stop the recording, everybody. Thank you so much. So much.
Bye-bye,
And
everyone.
bye.
Thank you, Evelyn. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Minerva. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye now.